Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, behind the What's Right microphone. The show this week will be on the road, at least through Wednesday, folks. I am in Europe, of all places, amidst the trade war, amidst the market meltdowns. I'm here. I'm abroad. I'm out of the country, and I'm really glad that I brought my equipment. I'm glad that I'm doing the program and taking time away from a very busy, compacted schedule here to be able to do this program. So April 7th today, a day to remember if you own stocks. It's not just here, folks. Circuit breakers across the world triggered starting Sunday our time as markets opened in Asia. And then, of course, in Europe, France halted trading about an hour in to the markets being open. So just to tell you this, the pain that is being felt around the world, by the way, my sense overall is that in terms of distress, there are global economies that are far worse off than us. And of note, the one that a lot of people are not talking about is China. Now, I'll get to China in a minute because a couple of conversations I've had with people over the weekend, as people have been asking me, Sam, what do you think? Of course, I get to Europe. I got here Sunday, yesterday. And immediately, people ask me, well, you know Trump, what's he doing? What is this all about? And there are two things that I need to just right here off the bat, at the get-go of the program, I need to tell you. Number one, I have now heard more times than I care to even repeat. It's embarrassing how many people have come to me and said, Sam, if only Trump would just hold a press conference or give a primetime speech, have a fireside chat, and look the world in the eye, look the camera in the eye, stare into it soulfully, and explain exactly what he was doing. I mean, all of this uncertainty could be done away with. The entire premise of that question is flat out idiotic. Let me explain to you why. In order for the great realignment to happen, in order for Trump's objectives here to be met, he can't explain what he's going to do. If he explained to people what he was doing, there would be no leverage. Trump's power right now, in fact, the power that we have in the United States, is that we are literally demonstrating to the world that we are willing to do whatever it is necessary to protect our interests, and that we can inflict enormous pain on other governments, financial markets, global trade, etc. As we speak, markets around the world have tumbled. I got here, I mentioned Sunday. So overnight, because of terrible jet lag, I'm not sleeping. I'm on my phone at 2 a.m, whatever. And I'm watching what's going on in Tokyo, in China. Then I get up in the morning. Europe, of course. France. I think they halted trading in Paris and the French stock market. I think in 1 hour into markets being open. And look, the criticism, and I think this is a very poor criticism, very poor take, is that we are not treating our allies with respect. How dare Trump do this? Well, listen, Trump has some goals, and we're going to get to this right now because there's a method to the madness. Now, I'm not immune from any of this. I want to make that very clear. I have a fair amount of my net worth invested in the market, and it has been terrible over the last week. disastrous. So I'm not sitting here atop an ivory tower, free from any consequences of this. I feel this pain personally. So I am separating my personal financial consequences and my own kind of personal desire to make money from what I think is necessary for the country to do as a whole. Now, the second thing I have to say about all of this, sort of in the big picture, is that Bessent, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, is an extremely smart guy. This is not some hack, right? Bessent is probably one of the world's most highly respected macro hedge fund managers, and he is and has been in alignment with Trump, focused on what economists are calling these macroeconomic trends, broad economic trends, and how they're affecting global markets. One thing he is very good at. He has, and I know we use this name a lot very negatively, but he has George Soros-like financial understanding of world markets and proper hedge fund strategies. And he's somebody who has, like Soros, he understood, the bet against the British pound. This is how Soros made much of his early billions. So, there are certain signs leading up to the bet against the pound, the famous hedge. And the market in the 90s, early 90s, was in Great Britain, was inflated housing prices, high treasury yields, okay? And that there was a big short, right, that was going to happen. We have housing prices that are out of control. We have interest rates that are out of control. And these are, lead market indicators, and they're pricing people out of the market. And it's an economy that increasingly is working for a very small amount of people, and it's not sustainable. So what, and it's two parts, right? We want to, on one hand, make America stronger, make our economy stronger. But at the same time, we want to box in our principal geopolitical and economic rival, and that is China. Now, China, and I've been mentioning this for a while here on this program, for anybody that cares to listen, I'm telling you, China's economy is a paper tiger and has been suffering. They have not recovered from COVID. Even before COVID, China was running into trouble. It's still a command economy. The government there controls everything. The government there is terrified of having any dips, of having any economic pain. So they have pursued a policy over the last however many years of basically funding a perpetual growth mode, which is not realistic. It's not how markets work. It's not how economies work. The Chinese yuan, the currency there, is collapsing as we speak. And, they're, the government, of course, is going to force to devalue the currency, but that means, of course, that in turn, China can't buy oil and other things that they must have for their economy to continue. China imports a lot of stuff that they simply don't have. And, that is, let me tell you, folks, everybody says, well, what about China? Why is Trump going after Europe? He's going after our friends. Wait, why doesn't he just focus on China? Because this all has to be done and sorted out in one great big reckoning at one point in time. We want to inflict some damage on China. We want to right size an enormous trade deficit that we've had with them for years. At the very same time, we are a debtor nation. We have, $30+ trillion of national debt. About $9.2 trillion, and I mentioned this last week, is up for renewal. These are bonds, treasury bonds, that are set for refinance this year. Who holds that debt? Principally, it's Japan and China. Notice what is going on in Japan, in their markets. Notice what's going on in China. If we can stress those two economies out, we force liquidation of U.S. treasuries, which means those treasuries will be dumped at a loss in a drive for hard currency. Now, what happens when that occurs? Well, guess who can buy it up? We can. And we can buy up our own debt for, cents on the dollar. Not cents on, but, at a discount. We can not only, folks, get a better interest rate on our debt, but we literally can shave some of that debt off. If we can come out of this, if we as a country can emerge with even a 25% debt reduction overall of our nation's, not deficit, but our actual national debt, our economy will come roaring back in a way you can't even imagine. But nobody's thinking about this. Everybody's thinking about my 401k, my 401, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this is the Great Depression. This isn't the Great Depression. These are tariffs. I mean, the fundamentals of our economy are incredibly strong. We have a marketplace for our goods. And we have everybody lining up. There's 100 phone calls into the White House as we speak from around the world, people looking to make a deal. And the reason Trump isn't making a deal is it really isn't about the tariffs. I mean, that will be one thing that happens at the end of this 0%, trade, free trade. I'm convinced that's going to happen with a number of countries around the world. But what really is the driving force behind this is to secure up our economy. So let me take you through this today. This is so important to understand. There's a lot at play. And the people that are doing this are not dumb. Okay? Trump didn't just wake up one morning and decide he's going to burn the world economy down. It's not how this is working. My gosh. All right. Don't go anywhere. The What's Right show will be back in just a minute. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Don't go anywhere, folks. Lots to cover today.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome back to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Monday, April 7th. Wow, lots going on out there. First off, again, if you want to extract concessions in a deal, then you've got to be unpredictable. That's what Trump's doing here. He's being unpredictable, and he's doing it on purpose. For every person that has a take, something along the lines of, if only Trump communicated better, all of this could have been avoided, is missing the point. Everything here, second point, very important, hinges on China. I think Europe has come to the table wanting to negotiate. Taiwan wants to negotiate. Australia wants to negotiate. We had overtures already, before all this even happened, from Vietnam, Israel. Countries around the world have come to the table. China hasn't. And I think there has to be, I think that's the tell. I think China's the end game. Now, the other problem here is that our market was overinflated because Biden poured about $2 trillion of made-up money into it. We are paying for the sins of terrible economic policy over the last 4 years. And I'll tell you what that policy hinged on, what was behind it. when you looked at what Janet Yellen did under President Biden, under the last administration, the singular sole focus was political survivability. The only thing that Team Biden cared about was winning elections. If you think that's cynical, then ask yourself, why is it that the Biden administration released, millions of barrels from our strategic petroleum reserve right before the midterms? There was a political calculus in every move the administration made, and particularly an effort to postpone the inevitable, which would have been a slight recession following COVID. Sooner or later, we were going to have to pay the price for the fact that the country shut down for a year. Like, it's just insane. If you step back and think for it, we literally shut down our economy, sent everybody home, small businesses gone, eradicated. And the answer to fix it was what? It started under Trump. You have to say Trump did it first, and then Biden came in with even more free money, helicoptered, just thrown out, dumped into the economy. And it was unearned money. Worse yet, it wasn't created through any kind of economic activity. It was printed. So so you had actual, in real terms, economic decline because of and coming out of COVID. Worker productivity, all-time lows. You're not going to tell me right now, seriously, that for the 3 years following COVID, workers had the same productivity or greater that they had in the 3 years before COVID. People stopped working 40-hour weeks. People who used to work 60, 70-hour weeks went down to working 35. It hasn't been until basically the last 8 months or so, a year maybe, that big companies, corporate America is starting to wake up and say, look, you got to get your ass to work. You're done working from home in your pajamas. You can't do it. But my point is not to get stuck on COVID, but we really had to pay for that. And Biden artificially kept us from paying for any of that by continuing to dump money into the economy. And the actual number, I think, is like 1.9 trillion or something like that. It's insane. 1.9. Yeah, I looked it up here. So this is, that is now, that has to burn off, right? So what we can do, look, there's things that we have to do. There's deregulation. We've got to get tax cuts, right? We have to shrink government, but we have to also take care of our debt, which is an enormous drag on our economy. We're carrying this massive burden, and of every, tax dollar that goes into the government, an appreciable percentage of that goes to debt service, just interest. Imagine having a giant mortgage on your house, and it's an interest-only loan, and you keep refinancing it and taking money out and getting more and more in debt year over year. Your principal keeps growing, your payment keeps growing, and worse yet, around the time that you were taking on all of this debt, interest rates went up. So now, how do you get out of it? There's a very important point here I want to drive home for folks out there who think that Trump is a madman. Many, many years ago, when Trump was a developer and I think had a project that was, that had hit the skids, and he had something like, I forget what the number was, if it was a few $100 million of debt. And he couldn't pay was out, this was right, I think, when he declared bankruptcy. And he goes and has a meeting with the bank, and the bank looks at him and goes, Mr. Trump, you have a problem. And Trump looked at them and goes, no. You have a problem. Because if I default on this loan, your bank goes under. We are a debtor nation. Most of our debt is held by Japan and China. Trump is about to do to China what he did to that bank. And it has to happen. And it can. And all those criticisms everybody had of Trump over the years of how he played fast and loose in business, finally, we have somebody in our government who has real life experience. I'm grateful for it. All right. Got to take a break. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Back after this. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. My email, sam@whatsrightshow.com, sam@whatsrightshow.com. I am in Prague this week, in the Czech Republic, in Europe, amidst the crisis. And it's fascinating observing it from across the pond, as they say, because Europe is absolutely freaking out about this. And I tell you, my takeaway from that is that we have leverage. Trump is using that leverage for a purpose. Now, the man. The architect of everything going on right now is a man named Scott Bessent. Bessent sat down with Tucker Carlson, gave an in-depth interview about this at the end of last week. This was really, really good stuff. And everybody should listen and watch this interview. A lot of people haven't. So this was Friday. The economic realignment here that Scott Bessent's talking about. Now, he's our Treasury Secretary. I mentioned earlier, this guy really understands, broad economic trends. I mean, he's a very well-respected macro hedge fund manager. He understands how these things work. And he also understands that the precariousness of China's position in all this and what we need to do in order to take care of our debt and to repatriate our industry back into this country. We need to begin to produce things. And it's actually one of the cautionary tales of COVID. And a lot of people just moved on. They don't remember what happened when COVID occurred, China shut down, and all of a sudden, we didn't have a lot of stuff. All of a sudden, we're at the store and there was nothing to be had. Do you remember this? And it wasn't just because things were shutting down in this country. We couldn't get we couldn't declare, that a medicine factory in Indiana remain open because it was a vital interest to a necessary to be open business. Because that factory was in India. Those factories were in China. And we just weren't getting things that we needed. And so this is what Bessent said about it. And it's absolutely true. And I think people just very quickly have forgotten the reality on the ground.
One of the few good outcomes from COVID was we had a beta test for what maybe a kinetic war with a large adversary could look like. And it turned out that these highly efficient supply chains were not strategically secure. So that we don't make our own medicines, that we don't make our own semiconductors, that we don't make our own ships anymore. So I think if I were to say, like, was there any good outcome from COVID? It woke the world up to these supply chain problems.
And beyond just the supply chain, we do have a problem of affordability in this country and a depleting, shrinking middle class and an even further eroding working class. And we got to do something about this. And so Bessent's absolutely right when he told Tucker this.
For years, the American worker, middle class has been eviscerated. American workers have taken it on the chin. And, we're just starting to see some of the research now. Like, we're seeing research on what's called the China shock from 2004. It's just coming out now. And it's what you know, it's what I know. But finally, academics are saying, oh, the American workers never recovered from the China shock. What a surprise. And President Trump sensed it 40 years ago, but out in the campaign trail starting in 2015, up until last year, he has promised the American workers that the old standard of living can come back. And because what we've seen over the past at least 20 years since the China shock, but more like the past 30, are these massive distributional problems where the coasts have done great.
Yes.
And the middle of the
Exactly.
country they just seen quality of the life expectancy decline. They don't think their children are going to do better than they are. And a lot of people don't care. And President Trump cares, this administration cares, and this is the first step towards realigning that. A lot of our trading partners, including some of our allies, have not been good partners. If tariffs are so bad, why do they have them?
Great question.
Why do they have them, right? Or if the American consumer is going to pay all the tariff, then why do they care about tariffs?
Right.
Because they're going to eat them.
Well, here's a couple things, right? And first of all, China shock from 2004. It really started early 2000s. This is when China entered the World Trade Organization in 2001. All right. And once that occurred, right, there was a rapid shift of manufacturing from the United States to China. In my adult life, right, let's see, I was 1998 is when I became an adult. So from 2000, right, from the time that 2001, time I am 44 now. For most of my adult life, I have lived, and many, many millions of Americans have lived under the paradigm that what was no longer is. That jobs that we used to have and things that we used to make in America, we don't anymore. And I want you all to just pause and take a breath. And I'm telling you, momentary shock, which may even potentially last a year, is 1,000% worth it if we can make improvements to this and take some of this back. We, the United States of America, have financed the rise of China, our greatest adversary, on the backs of the American working class. It is the most effed up thing I can even think of. And the globalists gave it to us. Rhino Republicans, Democrats in cahoots with central bankers and Wall Street tycoons. And the most, even though I have great disdain for Country Club Rhino Republicans, I have a particular repulsion to the Democrats out there who for years have trafficked politically in this charade that they care about the working poor. It's a complete and total lie. It's a fantasy. We got this policy from, well, it started with Nixon, the opening of China, but certainly Bill Clinton, George Bush, Obama, that trifecta got us to where we are now. And by the way, think back to Jimmy Carter's funeral. This is why, okay, you see the imagery of George Bush yucking it up, okay, with Obama, yucking it up with the Clintons. Those three are in sum and total basically politically the same. Why do they not like Trump? The media will have you believe it's because Trump is a convicted criminal and that he started an insurrection. And it's absurd. If you buy that, I can't help you. The real reason that Bill Clinton, okay, George Bush, and Barack Obama are yucking it up together whenever they see each other, high five, little knuckles, and hey man, how's it going? And then treat Trump like the plague is that they know he is the wrecking ball to their legacy. And by the way, the reason Trump is going to wreck globalism is because he will show just how flawed it is. See, we don't realize how bad the policies are of these three presidencies until we see it being fixed. And that's why I have to tell you folks, those of you out there who are supporters of the president and are hand-wringing and are worried that that this whole thing is going sideways and this is going to be a political cost for Republicans and all of that. Can you imagine when Trump pulls this off and we enter a period of correction like we've never had in the last 25 years? Can you imagine the political benefits that will come from that? I mean, it's going to be unbelievable. So this is, this just kind of, let's keep our eyes on the big picture here, because it's huge. And the restructuring of the debt, that's just one small thing, but it's not an insignificant one. If we can repatriate manufacturing to the U.S. in some part, if we can renegotiate the terms on which we trade with the world, and if we can restructure our debt, everything we are going through right now is nothing. And the only reason that it hasn't been done by previous administrations is because they weren't Trump, okay? And they just simply didn't have the political balls to do it. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right Show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. By the way, email me, sam@whatsrightshow.com, sam@whatsrightshow.com. And then, of course, find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, and that is at What's Right Sam, at What's Right Sam. By the way, I am in Prague, and I posted yesterday on Twitter, I posted a little photo of just, I was standing on the bank of the river looking up toward Prague Castle, and there's some blossoms coming in, spring starting here. And it's absolutely stunning. So just have a look on there if you're kind of curious what it looks like here. Absolutely beautiful city, and it's good to be here in spite of the fact that everybody around me is just beside themselves, wondering what the hell's going on in the U.S. Oh, this is also a favorite criticism of mine. Sam, America used to be the leader in the world. It used to be the leader. Now our allies can't rely on us. I had somebody I spoke to yesterday tell me that we can't rely on America anymore. I said, look, I'm in the Czech Republic here, and I go, well, what percentage of your GDP have you been spending on the military? Why is my country $30 trillion in debt, paying, 60% of the NATO budget when you can't even meet your minimum requirements? Like these are the things that you tell people who who come out with these ridiculous criticisms, including not in Florida, but Americans themselves. right? Because you hear this criticism. So, so look, Scott Bessent did a wide-ranging interview late Friday with Tucker Carlson, and one of the things that he said is that it's Main Street's turn. Wall Street's been getting rich, but it's time for Main Street to do well. This I think is an absolute truth, and this is how Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, put it.
It's also an economic security issue, and it's to, I don't want to say redistribute, but it is to give working Americans real wage gains and enhance their lives. And I've said out on the campaign trail, one of my most frequent mottos was, Wall Street's done great. It can continue doing well, but it's Main Street's turn. It's Main Street's turn. And that's what we saw yesterday. It's Main Street's turn.
I'm sitting here in Europe, and of course there's countries here have tariffs on foreign goods, particularly in the manufacturing sector, and it's primarily to protect workers and manufacturing in Europe. Like, we're the only country that somehow just thinks it's, we're just idiotic in this at the expense of our working class. It's not right. It's back to that mention here of what these folks out there are saying. Oh, America used to be that we could rely on America. America has been like the sugar daddy of the world. Like, we're an old fool with a ton of money, and we got these, hot chicks that are taking advantage of us everywhere we go, a la China. Fang Bang. What's her name? Eric Swalwell would be an excellent trade negotiator with China. We would just turn this over to Eric Swalwell, right, Robbie? No, we just give, oh yeah, you need help. Oh yeah, no problem. You're going to tariff, our goods, but you want to trade, fair trade the other direction. You want us to buy all your stuff, but you're not going to buy ours. Like, it isn't just about the tariff rate. This is another thing that pisses me off. Trade negotiation involves also saying you will commit to buying from us if we buy from you. You want us to buy cheap Nike shoes that cost $15, $16 to make in Vietnam, right? Nike's factory in Vietnam is a big to do right now. But Vietnam came to the table, Sam. They came to the table ready to deal. Well, wait. Trump has things he needs to do. There's a bigger play here. But at any rate, it's not just about the $16 sneakers. It's about, all right, so what is Vietnam going to buy from us? If it's a one-way street, that's the calculus, right? That's the trade deficit. It's not all just tariffs. It's negotiating, it's negotiating a deal and a commitment to open up really the U.S. market. And we have enormous purchase power here. Even after this, this bloodbath to our, these stocks. I mean, it's obviously real pain. But here's what I'm trying to say. That we still are, one of the top markets in the world. We should be leveraging that to get, to get a benefit. And nobody's come along because nobody's wanted to expend the political capital. Look at the amount of hate Trump is getting. There are people melting down. Bill Ackman, who is a Trump supporter, right? Billionaire, Pershing Square investor, super smart guy. There's a joke, right, that the market crash won't end until Bill Ackman cries on CNBC. So we'll see how that goes. But look, Ackman is over the weekend spent all weekend telling Trump to put a 90-day pause on this. And I don't know. I mean, but Ackman's a smart guy, you know. Maybe he sees something I don't. That's entirely possible. But I'm just telling you that Scott Bessent is also a very smart guy. There are people that understand, and we have tried Wall Street's conventional thinking on this for far too long. And it isn't just about tariffs. It's about the volume of trade. So, but my point is Bill Ackman going, oh, the formula for figuring out the tariff rate's all wrong because it's not the actual tariff discrepancy. It's the trade deficit, and that's nonsense. Nobody cares about the deficit. Well, we do. If you're an American in a factory that got shuttered and we're, you know, China isn't buying stuff made in that factory, but what we're buying everything made in China, that's not right. You know, that's the issue. Why should we be shutting down our factories that we're paying good wages to people just so we can buy cheap stuff when really our purchase power as a country continues to go down when we do not have a thriving working class and a middle class? So this is what needs to, this is what this is all about. All right. I got to get to the protests. Did you see the protesters here in Vegas on Saturday on my way to the airport? Let me tell you a story when we come back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program, and happy Monday. So, listener, by the way, just sent this to me on X, on Twitter. I just wanted to run this by you real fast. By the way, you can find me on X at What's Right Sam, on X, formerly known as Twitter. And I do check this during the show. So there you go. This is from the Taiwanese government. And to my point about this free trade thing being more than just zero tariffs, about it being some parity or some fair exchange of goods and a commitment to buy American-made products. Here we go. Taiwan does not seek retaliatory tariffs. This is, by the way, from the president of Taiwan. Taiwan does not seek retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. Instead, will start talking from bilateral zero tariffs, meaning zero tariffs on both sides, to ensure Taiwan's competitiveness will increase U.S. imports and adopt other measures. This is what Trump is going for. My goodness. Tell every one of the dim-witted people that you run into who are hand-wringing over this, say, listen, it's not just about zero tariffs. It's about increasing the products that other countries are committing to buy from the U.S. It's like this giant Buy American campaign. Hey, you want to trade with us? We'll give you zero tariffs, but you've got to buy American. And every country that buys a little bit more American is more money into the workers of America and the businesses of America. And it's going to help Main Street. It's going to help Wall Street. It's going to help all of us. And our economy will go gangbusters. So just mark my words, but just hang tight. Let the guy do what he's doing. Okay. So I'm in Europe right now. I'm just so jet lagged out of my mind. Oh my God. It's the trip. I always tell people the trip, it's not about the flight. The flight is, it's 10 hours to somewhere in Europe and an hour, to Prague. There's no direct flights from Vegas or from LA. So you basically have to, no matter what, change planes somewhere. So it's an 11-hour, 12-hour flight time total. It's not about that. It's the time change. It just murders me. It's 9 hours late. So, later. So it's 11 o'clock at night here. And but I'm all turned around. I feel fine now, mostly, because of course it's, it's, in afternoon at home. But I'm just all turned around. But anyway, on Saturday, I was headed to the airport and the best thing about flying out of Vegas International, those of you who might do this from time to time can attest to this. Unlike other major airports like LAX or someplace, you really can show up I mean, I don't recommend it, but you can show up like an hour before your flight, provided that the airline is cool with it. So I mean, I do. But I was already cutting it a little bit short, and on my way to the airport, I had to stop on the Strip. I had to make a stop at City Center, so kind of where the Aria is. And we ducked in there. We were driving in the wife's car, which is a Tesla. Yes, my wife has a Tesla Model X and loves it, by the way. So anyway, we pull in, and right when we're pulling out right there onto Las Vegas Boulevard, down the whole street comes this giant group of anti-Elon Musk, paid operatives, just marching down the street with their signs and everything. And the only thought we just looked at each other and we go, oh my gosh, the last thing that we need right now is, some kind of an encounter and damage to the car and having to wait for the police. I'm going to miss my flight. It's going to be a disaster. So I just, none of that happened. They didn't attack us. But we had to wait for them to pass. And I think they were very deliberate in crossing slowly in front of us on the street. But anyway, apparently they went there. The protesters were also down by the office, downtown in the Arts District, where Salmon Ash is. So they're all over the place. But here's the protests were all over the country. I don't know if you saw this. I mean, they were everywhere. In Boston, they're in LA. They were even in Salt Lake City. I saw some protesters, and anyway, it was just as a wild scene. But I don't know. The data has started to come in. Here's my point with all this. The data has started to come in from the protests, for example, in Chicago. It shows enormous, right? Video came out of it looks like a few thousand people out there. So there's the guy, I've followed him now for quite some time, Tony Saruga, who does all the GPS phone data analysis. And they remember the Kamala Harris rallies, how it was always the same people that went to the rallies. And they would be, it would always, like 80% of the people at all the rallies, or 85% of them, had been to 5 or 6 Kamala Harris rallies. So you can't find out their names, but you can find out other things about, like you can get that anonymized data, and it's publicly available. This guy goes and analyzes it. And by the way, he was spot on during the Kamala Harris years campaign, because what did he find out? He found out that it was all fake. They wanted us to believe during the 2024 election that Kamala Harris had this enormous public support behind her. But it was all made up, right? These were all people paid to be there. So by the way, this scene here in Chicago that got a lot of press coverage, organizers said there were 30,000 people there. CBS News said there were, thousands. Okay. There were 7,498 mobile devices in the crowd. Okay. Of those, 92% attended 5 or more Kamala Harris rallies. Think about that. 5 or more Kamala Harris rallies. What are the chances that these people are paid? These are groups, by the way: Rise and Resist, a 501c4 nonprofit organization; Indivisible Project. I've played videos of these people talking before. Troublemakers. Now that's a for-profit group. Democratic Socialists of America, also a 501c4. Muslim Brotherhood. These were the projects with which these numbers were associated with. So, and by the way, the people there, I'll see if we have play this. It's interesting. There's a lot of people there absolutely can't even explain what it is that they're really protesting. They have no idea. They're getting paid, is my point. They're taking the 7,000 people, they're making $100 or whatever it is. And these groups are spending real money, but they've got it. And one thing you can't take from this is that there is some sort of uprising, a real political uprising against Elon Musk and against Doge. Now, Trump is, by the way, just to be clear, Trump is going to suffer approval ratings, problems in the next, over the next few months. This push right now with trade and tariffs and restructuring our debt is going to produce a short-term pain that is going to make a lot of people very angry. The same, by the way, with Doge. I look at that also as a long-term play, and it's part of the same. It was one prong of a multi-pronged strategy to really make sure that the American economy takes off. And so going after the debt anyway. My point is this is not some sort of popular uprising, and it reminds me too, going back 5 years to the summer of George, that those uprisings were paid for by all this USAID money. And it was basically a color revolution on our own soil. The Democrats did here what they did in Ukraine. And they got away with it back then. They're not getting away with it now because it just doesn't, it hasn't gone anywhere. No, people, we're wise to what it is that they're doing. So here, these people are really, really not sure what they're doing at all out there. This was in DC. I'd take a break. I got to play this I want to give this the justice that it deserves. These people, again, they're just paid to be there. That's all it is. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right Show will be back in a moment.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right Show is on. Protests this weekend on Saturday across the country, all organized, all bought and paid for. Folks there, as I mentioned earlier, large percentage of them having attended multiple rallies for Kamala Harris. Now, why is that important? Because nobody, when you look at a cell phone, and you don't know what the name of the person, but you look at a cell phone. If they have attended, if somebody lives in Atlanta, Georgia, it's one thing to go to a couple of rallies that Kamala Harris has in Atlanta, Georgia. But how many people actually go around and travel around the country to go follow, like a groupie, to go follow their candidate? I understand Trump had some people who really went around to different rallies and would travel around the country. It's a small group. And Trump has a very loyal following. And his rallies are wildly entertaining. So it's, so I'm just, my point is, when you see data of a phone, somebody who traveled to multiple states, this is someone who was, who was on the list as a paid extra for the Democratic Party and its associated causes. This whole thing is an op. So there was a guy, Ted Goodman, went to the DC hands off my Social Security, hands off my government protest, and starts asking people there, what they think, and trying to get out why they're there. It's really actually quite funny.
What makes Trump a fascist? It does things without you gotta talk loud. I don't have my mic on. I'm not really good into interviews. Sorry? He just does everything he wants, and not following laws, or he's a convicted felon. That's all I know. Well, but your sign says he's a fascist, and I'm just curious what makes him a fascist.
Notice, by the way, quick pause here. Notice he's a fascist. Look at the sign. The sign is perfectly printed, like expertly printed. Like this isn't a sign that he made at home. They're passing these signs out. This is all very organized. Okay, I'm just making that point.
Is that he's trying to control the,
Here comes
the
another
media,
guy.
right?
Say that again.
He's trying to control the narrative. Like,
How is he trying to control the media? Doesn't every president try to control the narrative?
they try to control their own narrative, but one of the things that Trump's has done, for example, is the renaming the Gulf of Mexico, and then not allowing the Associated Press to come into the White House.
My question is, the sign says the fascist Trump regime must go.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious what makes him a fascist. You pointed out that maybe something about his relationship with the media, he wants to control it, but
Yeah.
how? Again, you're calling him a fascist.
Yeah, well,
What makes him a fascist?
One of the core tenets of fascism is creating an enemy, right? And blaming those problems on
What's
the enemy.
that?
So-
the paper gave me, yeah.
Who gave you that?
Oh, look at
People
that.
gave me the sign. It's a free sign.
Oh, someone gave you the sign, and then they gave you the handout. So are you reading it now to try to answer the question?
No, but I mean,
Can I see that? Can you hold that
I'm
up?
just not.
No, I'm just curious.
You can have it.
I can have it?
Yeah, you can have it.
All righty. So where did you get the sign?
Oh, all the way in the gatekeeper's house.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just pretty cool.
And that's another one? They gave you 2 pieces of paper? Can I have that one too?
Yeah, you can have both.
Oh, okay. So what brings you guys out here today?
Just because I saw people were hanging out with people in front.
This whole thing is a mess, right? You see what's going on here? No, I mean it's I'm telling you, the whole thing is an op. The whole thing is just a setup. And as long as you know that, then it becomes, an entertaining thing. But you cannot let anybody tell you, look at all the people that are upset about what is happening. Look at all the people that are coming out in opposition to Elon Musk. And it starts to really put into focus that the vandalism and the targeted attacks against Tesla owners, the shooting of and damage of Tesla vehicles, that there's an important reason why we treat that as organized domestic terrorism, because that's what it is. Like this is all happening at scale, and it's being organized by people who are pumping millions upon millions of dollars into a political machine to see this happen. Right. And the purpose of it, of course, is to get, to inflict maximum pain on Tesla and Elon Musk, so that Musk leaves the government, and so that nobody else, no other pesky successful people who have real world experience ever go into government to do anything, like this again. Any future person who is a self-made billionaire who is successful in business will think twice before they sacrifice themselves, their company, their workers, their customers at the altar of left-wing political activism. Well, it's not even the right way. The left-wing activists are the ones that are going after these people, and nobody wants to sacrifice themselves for the good of the country. That's the real way of putting it. So that this is crazy. Now the interviews just got worse from there. This is another set of interesting characters there at the Hands Off My Government rally.
What are we protesting today?
Donald Trump.
Well, what's Donald Trump doing that we're protesting?
Well, he is up the American democracy right now and trying to kind of repeal a bunch of in the Constitution, like, rights and liberties. So,
is there anything in specific that
I don't have all the information, but I do know.
What are you against?
Personally, I'm against tyrants. I'm against tyranny. That's what I'm against.
What is that?
Somebody who's coming in and trying to take over the country and get rid of the rules and regulations that have existed for centuries to keep us citizens safe.
And who do you think is doing that?
Currently, Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all of his cabinet members.
Why Elon Musk, though?
the Department of Government Efficiency. He was put in charge of a department that doesn't even exist before this, and he's not even an American.
Who's not an American?
Elon Musk.
Okay.
From South Africa. I don't know if you knew that.
How do you feel about Donald Trump?
I think that he deserves to die.
He should what?
Die.
Okay. All right.
That's how I feel.
So who do you want to run America?
The people, preferably.
You want the people to run America?
Like a democracy should be, yes.
Do you feel like the people voted for him?
I think the people were fooled.
Fooled by who?
Him.
How?
I don't,
It's
dude.
a false consciousness.
It's a what?
It's a false consciousness.
It's a false conscience. For leftists, democracy is not about one person, one vote. Democracy is a fiction for them, a story that they tell to cover or to be some sort of an explanation of the outcome that they actually want. For each and every one of these people, they wanted to install Kamala Harris as president. Kamala Harris never competed in a primary. Well, she did in 2020 and got her ass handed to her. But Kamala Harris got selected, was put in by the Democratic National Committee, never had a vote of the Democratic Party to put her in the position as the party nominee, got slid in, and then democracy should work in a way that Kamala Harris becomes president. When actual votes get counted up and Donald Trump becomes president, well, that's not democracy, right? That's tyranny. Return the power back to the people. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Be right back after this. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. In Prague this week, in the Czech Republic, Europe, and still keeping a tab on everything going on back home, but out of the studio, so forgive the show today as we, the sound is, not everything is as good. I'm just sitting here in the apartment, so I've got, it doesn't all work like it does back home. So, of course, I appreciate that, that you guys are so patient with me. Email sam@whatsrightshow.com, on X, on Twitter, at What's Right Sam. Speaking of the election, right? So every one of these protesters in some way, shape, or form on Saturday is talking about how Trump is a fascist. Trump is a dictator. Trump is a tyrant. And that he wasn't democratically elected. I mean, yes, people voted, but they were fooled. They were fooled. And so what I think is interesting in this, too, is that, as the Democratic Party reflects on its bruising defeat in 2024, there's been a series of interviews. A really good one happened on Sunday. Tim Walz went on with Jake Tapper. And Tapper asks Walz basically flat out sort of what he thinks was sort of the criticisms of the race and his handling of the campaign. This was good.
Well, what do you make of the criticism that one of the reasons why your party was so resoundingly rejected last November is because Democrats were gaslighting the country, saying that inflation was not a big deal, heralding Bidenomics. Not only Biden, but Kamala Harris was heralding Bidenomics, pretending that there wasn't a problem at the border. And then fundamentally, this idea that President Biden was up for another 4 years of the job while Americans in poll after poll for year after year were saying he's too old to do the job. Your party stood against all of those things.
Look, Joe Biden coming in and doing COVID and being a governor through COVID did a hell of a job. But I think one of the things that we didn't do is we assumed that we said, and it was true, that we were going to have a soft landing and our economy was better than the rest of the world. Better for who? Better for the working class who was saying groceries were too expensive, as they are now and going up. I think the fact of the matter is Joe Biden did soft land the economy. He did usher us through COVID. None of us are saying we should be soft on the border.
Don't you think your party needs to acknowledge that President Biden was not up for the job of running for re-election.
Wait
and
for
that this
this.
was a major mistake by the
He made that
Democrat-
decision.
I know, but you all went
Yeah,
along with
he
the
made that
idea that he was
decision.
up for it, and he wasn't. And everybody saw it, and the country rejected it.
Yeah, well, look, history will tell us to go back on that. That very well could be the case, Jake. What I'm concerned about is learning from those lessons. I would hope we would never do it again, make a mistake, make sure we go through and get someone. But I don't know where it helps us going forward. Remember, Donald Trump has statements about, I don't think nuclear war would be that bad. I guess we're lucky that he went after tariffs instead of that route.
Okay, see, this is why I don't think the Democratic Party will ever recover. Certainly not in the foreseeable future from what happened last year. Now, to be clear, Jake Tapper, for years covered up for Joe Biden the same way that Tim Walz did during the campaign. Jake Tapper is part of the problem that he's describing. Now, Tapper's all over this Biden thing because he's selling and he's hawking his new book, where he, now comes around and exposes the fact that Biden was, drooling from the corner of his mouth for much of the 4 years that he was president. But let's set that part of it aside. Remember what I told you in the first hour of this program about COVID and about the soft landing and about the political motivations of Democrats in the Biden administration to, at all costs, keep the economy afloat for the sake of a political convenience, for the sake of political expediency. They're still talking about it. They pumped almost $2 trillion of made-up money into the economy to bring about that soft landing. They're still bragging about it. They still don't understand that they created the greatest bubble that was fighting against a necessary correction in our economy coming from the fact that our, businesses were shut down and then had years of lagging productivity. And they still want to pretend that this is some sort of a pat on the back and kudos the Democrats get. It's astonishing to me, right? But this is, again, right now what we're doing is we are undoing the mess that Biden created, that his brilliant economic team created, where every calculation that they made wasn't what is good for America, what is good for the working classes, what's good for the middle class, what's good for the people that we purport to want to help. No, they only cared about winning the damn election. They will say and do and spend whatever it takes just to win. These people are so fundamentally morally bankrupt. It's unreal. They all pretended that Biden was fine. They all pretended that he was completely with it. They all went along with it. It was a nonsense. But that's the part of it that's easy to prove. And you have to trust me when I tell you, you don't have to be a high-level economist to understand that when you print $1.9 trillion and pump it into the economy, just drop it in, that prices are going to go up. And then you don't have to be a high-level Nobel Prize-winning economist to go, oh, well, shoot, Sherlock, I wonder who that's going to affect more, rich people or poor people? Like, I'm rubbing my forehead here, folks. It's exasperating. And this, again, from the Democrats, the party that purport to be the party that represents the working poor. And I loved, this was good. Tapper basically had to explain to Walz that the unions support Trump tariffs. This was a good moment.
President Trump argues that these tariffs are needed to bring American manufacturing back and to help American workers left behind in places like Minnesota. He has support from the UAW. The UAW called his auto tariffs, quote, a long overdue shift away from a harmful economic framework that has devastated the working class. It signals a return to policies that prioritize the workers who build this country rather than the greed of ruthless corporations, unquote.
I'm telling you, folks, this was on Sunday. This was yesterday. When you listen to the Wall Street guys, they're all screaming, most of them. But you listen to the rest of America, and this is a necessary realignment. It's a must do. And this takes me back to one more little moment in the Scott Bessent interview with Tucker Carlson on Friday. There's a chance that these tariffs work. And for that reason, we ought to try it. This was a great moment in the interview with Tucker, our Treasury Secretary, who's leading this effort here to right-size our trade deficits across the globe. And he said this.
The people who are hoping that yesterday's move will lead to a demonstrably brighter future within 4 years. Is it your sincere prediction that within 4 years we'll say, actually, that kind of worked?
I believe that it's going to work, and I know that what we were doing wasn't working.
Yes.
So I think we have to try this, and I have a high confidence ratio it's going to work. And I have a very high confidence ratio. The good news is we have President Trump's previous term when everyone said none of this was going to work. Oh, yeah. The China tariffs are going to do this. They're going to cause inflation. They didn't. This is going to happen to working class. It's going to be bad for working class Americans. Well, guess what? Working class Americans, the hourly workers did better than supervisory workers. The bottom 50% of households, their net worth increased faster than the top 10% of households. And look, I'm not happy with what's going on in the market today, but the distribution of equities across households, the top 10% of Americans own 88% of equities, 88% of the stock market. The next 40% owns 12% of the stock market. The bottom 50 has debt. They have credit card bills. They rent their homes. They have auto loans, and we've got to give them some relief. That I was struck by the statistic from last year.
That's the message right there. Just as a bystander, I'm like, wow, okay.
This is it. And this will cement Trump's political legacy and the political legacy of the Republican Party that embraces Trumpism and guarantees success in future elections. Because when you pursue an economic policy that actually helps people in the long run and improves the country in the long run, and you're not just pursuing economic policies to win the next election cycle, the midterms, the presidential election, 2-year increments. When you're thinking long-term, as Trump is thinking, with a devil may care, burn it all down, whatever the hell it takes attitude, that is bold leadership that we have not seen in this country since Reagan, or maybe even before that. My optimism right now is really actually at a very high level, higher than I think it's been so far in my lifetime. I cannot say that more emphatically. All right, when we come back, my closing argument in all of this, I'll sum it all up for you folks and do my best to leave you with a little bit of hope if I can. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In an accident, in a crash, call Sam & Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. All right, friends, greetings. Welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian behind the What's Right microphone. So I just want to sum this all up. I want to give a quick summary. For those of you out there panicking and worried about what the future brings, I believe that if this plan is successful, if what this administration intends to do can be done, that it will be of immense and lasting benefit to each and every American, to our nation for many generations to come. Now, what is that? this isn't just a trade war. It isn't even just a trade deficit war. This is part of a larger strategy to fix the fundamentals of our economy. Now, our economy has a few fundamental problems that I think, I'm convinced of this, by the way, that sooner or later we would have to pay the price for. And I see. Well, let me tell you first what they are. Number one, we had a huge amount of fake money being put into our economy over the last 4 years that didn't belong, and the pain of that would have eventually reached us. We also have an enormous deficit and enormous national debt. So, even before the tariffs were announced, Doge began working on day one to begin reducing the deficit, so at least the debt would stop increasing. And then there's a question of what to do with the debt. In the short term, I believe that there was a deliberate strategy, and Trump is never going to say this publicly, but there's a deliberate strategy to crash the equities markets and drive investors into securities, into bonds. And I say that because I know that the U.S. government has about $9.2 trillion, so let's say roughly a third of the national debt up for refinancing this year. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say you have a fixed mortgage, or you have a mortgage that for a fixed number of term or a fixed rate, and you are going to hit a variable rate this year. Would you want rates to go up or down before you have to refinance that mortgage? The answer is you absolutely would want those rates to go down. Of course, I know I would. So what control do you have over rates? None. What control do I have over rates? None. Just luck of the draw. Did you refinance when rates were 2.8%, or did you refinance like I had to a couple of years ago when my rate is 6.97? It's just luck of the draw. But guess who can control it? The U.S. government. Why? Because we're one of the world's biggest economies, if not the biggest, in its aggregate. So what do? Well, we crash markets, and the panic that ensues. I mentioned earlier, we are a debtor nation. Our largest debt holder is China. If China continues to spiral, and their economy already was teetering on the verge of depression, if we or certainly major recession, if we force China to begin to dump U.S. treasuries, then those treasuries can be bought up at a savings, maybe 10%, 20%, 25%. And if that happens, we can come in and buy those treasuries and purchase them back and refinance that debt at a better term, but also reduce the principal. That's not insignificant. That's not for nothing. So I want you to think about that. Now, the other thing is, we must create a country that is more prosperous for the working class and middle class. We cannot just have a country that works for the top 10%. Eventually, that will spell doom and destruction. And the party that can actually deliver, the political movement that actually can affect that change, will be the party that rules America forever, okay? Or for the foreseeable future. This idea that we don't make anything in the country, that we don't have factories here, that we do everything overseas, one, it's bad for national security. It's bad. What if we have a war with China? Scott Bessent said this, that COVID was really the foreshadowing, or gave us an insight into what would happen if there was major geopolitical conflict, and we realized how dependent we were on China. We realize that we have semiconductors made in China that are being deployed into our power grid in this country, for example, and they have kill switches in them, giving China and the Chinese Communist Party potentially control over our power grid. Who thinks that this is a good idea from a national security perspective? Never mind the fact that it's Chinese workers getting paid to make those semiconductors and not Americans. We should be making them here. For every worker that has a job, that gets a paycheck, that is a paycheck that is being deployed back into the U.S. economy. I don't care that, the fool's errand go, well, but in China we can produce it for a unit cost is lower. Yes, but every worker that worked on it, that money isn't being spent in America. They're not buying American goods even. They live in China. They're buying Chinese products. They're buying products from other countries in the world, but they're not buying anything from us. So yes, we got something. We got something produced for less, but none of that money, none of that savings is being put into our economy. It's not. Maybe it's being put in the hands of a few wealthy individuals, being distributed among the top 10% that own 88% of equities in the country. But it's not getting distributed on Main Street. It's not benefiting Anytown, USA. That's what needs to change. And every 1,000 jobs that come back have a meaningful effect on our GDP, have a meaningful effect on our economy, and also creates, certainly enhanced national security. We should be producing our medication. We should be producing our critical infrastructure. We should be shipbuilding. We should be making drones. You think that, if the future of warfare is drone technology, for example, any country that doesn't make drones, that doesn't produce drones, is going to lose whatever the next hot war is. So we got to get real about this stuff, folks. That's my point in all of this. So let's keep our wits about us. We're going to get this figured out. I will be back tomorrow again here on the road with the What's Right show. But fear not, we've got this, and America will prevail. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. See you, man.